Hey, what's going on, my friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today is a special video because not only do I have a special guest, Kyle Cease, but we're going to be talking about something very important, and that is what the heck is happening on the planet in regards to the mass awakening, the planetary ascension, and all the different sort of expressions and manifestations of it that might be having most people on the planet wondering, scratching their heads, what the heck is going on? Is this world coming to an end? And of course, a lot of us who watch videos like this know that no, it's not coming to an end. There's a huge awakening happening. But as of the last couple of years, it's taken a major shift. And me and a good friend of mine, Kyle Cease, are going to be talking about that. So if you don't know who Kyle Cease is, he's a very well-known comedian, a best-selling author. He's worked with Eckhart Tolle, Jim Carrey, Depok. He's a very well-known person in this spiritual space that has this extremely unique and brilliant way of blending comedy. He's hilarious. He was a very well-known stand-up comic for like decades with spirituality. So he's got this way about him of communicating amazingly well because he's done so many live shows and he's able to communicate the spiritual information so well and once in a while sprinkle in a joke that'll have you just bursting into laughter. So I ran across Kyle here in Sedona. It just sort of happened magically, and we become close friends very quickly. And he was so kind to come and spend some time with me and offer his magic, his wisdom here for you all on my channel. I'm very excited for you to meet him. He's got a lot to offer. I've already learned a ton from him in very life-changing ways. He's also just someone who's really living this life. He's a real authentic. He walks the walk in a way that is very inspiring to me. So without further ado, I'm going to shift here in a moment, and me and Kyle are going to be here, and you get to witness this amazing conversation we have about all the things I talk about. So in watching some of your recent content, Kyle, one of the words that keeps coming to me is expansion.
Yes.
It seems a lot of people, I was watching one of the videos you sent me where you were working with your coaching clients, and it seemed like a lot of people's questions and concerns were about, like, how do I trust? How do I expand? The old self is sort of like getting in the way and that kind of thing.
You know, it's interesting. So first of all, just as a default, whether we want to or not, we are expansive beings, right? Whether we want to or not. And that's why if we don't choose to participate along with the expansion that's happening, for instance, if you stay in a job that doesn't call to your soul for longer and longer and longer, your soul is expanding while you're living in the smaller self, and you're creating a farther distance between the true you and the false you, right? And that's where most suffering is. So imagine if you're a Harvard senior, but you keep living at first grade, right? You're just sitting here as a first grader over and over and over again, and you've learned in life is be the best in first grade, get that 40 years at first grade, and then retire, and then you've mastered life. Meanwhile, your soul is going, okay, now I'm a Harvard grad, now I'm blah blah blah, now I'm even farther, right? You're here as an expansive being, and part of our process of expansion requires surrendering things that are not in our soul's highest, not in our truth. Like really being okay with letting go of people that you might have been friends with for 30 years, but you realize that they don't align. It's not even judgment to them. It's not anything else, but there's an attachment that's trying to die for all of us, right? You have an attachment to people or jobs. And the reason we have these attachments is because we have a belief that if I lose this thing, if I let go of this job, something happens to me, right? And this thing that we're worried will happen is actually an unseen thing that happened in our childhood. Right? So in other words, I got to figure out what to do so my parents don't divorce again. I got to do the right thing so I'm not abandoned.
Yes.
Right? And so we are often moving from a place of protecting unseen trauma. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So the analogy that I've used in a couple different things is, imagine if, like, you and I and anyone watching, imagine we went to another planet. And we don't know anything about how the planet works, right? And imagine you're raised by two 20-foot tall aliens, and they don't speak English, and they're not really that safe, you know, and you start to realize, okay, like one of them comes home drunk and he's really loud. Okay, I notice that I need to be quiet when he's here, right? So you start to become a quiet person. And then the other one, the mom alien, really likes it. I don't know, I'm just giving random examples, but let's say she really likes it when you tap dance. And every time you're tap dancing, she's showing all her alien friends, and you realize, okay, as long as I stay quiet around the male, and as long as I'm dancing around the mom, you know, I'm loved and I'm not going to get hurt. Then imagine you do that for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? So your body starts to go, this is my habit. This is who I am. It's not who you are.
Right.
It's what you're doing to not get hit or yelled at and to get loved and seen by your mom.
Yes.
So then imagine you're there for 20 years, sometimes 25 years, 30 years. Then you go out to the rest of the world and you're tap dancing and you're silent. And those aliens are like, I don't even like tap dancing. And you're becoming what you think you're supposed to become to stay safe. But that's not necessarily true now. That was the pattern you created as a child. So then we make the mistake of creating these things. Okay, as long as I'm silent, you know, whatever. And then we call that us, right? Like, in other words, I'm a quiet person. I'm a warrior. Now, if that goes away, then you're dead.
Yeah.
So we actually protect our limitations because we associate that that's actually us. What I see in this time, and what's happening in this time, is life is making all of our false selves come to light and also redeem the trauma that's never been processed from little things. Even if your mom turns away for 5 minutes and turns back, you can feel a shock in your body. And if you're a little kid, it doesn't know how to process that, forgive it and let go. So I kind of think what the ego is the body going, that's too much for us to deal with. So we need to create a false character that makes sure we don't feel that again.
Yes.
Right? So what this expansion time is right now, your soul, you don't even have a choice in it. Your soul, like the universe, is shining a collective flashlight into all of our souls, into everything, the government, the media, everything, and it's bringing to light everything that's not the truth in us. And it's not only bringing it up so we can shame and judge it and judge each other. In fact, those are also characters we created to stay safe. It's bringing it up so that it can leave. And when it leaves, you start to connect with the truer aspect of what you are. What you actually are, I believe, the more we do this work, you are all that is. And it sounds like a very vague, nothing sentence, but there's no way I could be the guy that I created to protect myself from being yelled at again, right? That's just a method, that's just a vest I wore for protection. But we've made the mistake of thinking that's us.
Yeah.
So if you understand none of that, no limitation, no, I have to do everything, no, I'm a people pleaser, no, I have all this anger, none of that is you. It needs to be felt and processed, and I'm not saying ignore it, but it's not you. It's just clothes you wore that are trying to come off. And when you allow them to come off, you'll see more of what you are. You'll start to see, I notice in my life, a ton of synchronicities. Like I bumped into you right when I was like open to meeting new friends. Like, you know, it's just life. And we're at a park with our kids, you know, like just us. Like it was like, not like we met at a giant thing. It's like, we're now working together. So for me and for you, hopefully, that's my mom. She passed away 5 years ago. I'm kidding. People are like, he thinks that's his mom. I believe very much that life is trying very hard to support us.
Yes.
Right? And we egoically try to run everything. So that's like your 5-year-old you trying to take care of the current you. But life's trying to do it. Like I didn't even consider when I was thinking of stuff that I was going to be doing that you'd show up in my life, and you had an event that week.
Yeah.
And didn't know, like I'd be like, hey, do you want me to come do a thing there? We were supported in our yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we were supported in ways we couldn't see. And we're often scared to say yes to something because we think we need to see the guarantee of what the other side will be. But we didn't know we were going to meet each other. Right?
Yes.
So that wasn't included in my considering my yes. That's why you start to follow a feeling without the specifics.
Yes.
Right? That's kind of what I'm about, is saying yes to the thing based on feeling and not necessarily based on all the evidence of why I can see what I'll get from this thing. You know, a lot of people when they meditate, they're like, okay, why am I meditating? What will I get out of it? It's a very different meditation than if you just say yes to meditating with zero expectations.
Yeah.
Right? Because way more can happen if you're not sitting there with conditions.
Yeah.
Right? And I
Yeah.
think that's how life works.
I do too, and I think what's happening is that it's becoming more obvious to people. Like the tap dancing example. Like for a while, you may have been tap dancing truly like unaware that you're doing it just to please mom, even though you're 35 years old or whatever. And now it's becoming, I think, more obvious. Like you realize this is why I'm doing this.
Right.
And it doesn't make any sense. But it's so habitual, it's so ingrained in my identity that the alternative is so scary.
Right.
Because the mind, as you kind of said, it likes sure things. But the universe doesn't work that way. The universe works like, I want to meet friends. Well, I feel like I want to go to the park with my daughter. That's what feels natural to me. That feels light.
Right.
Resonates. And then there's Victor, a buddy I meet. And that's how it works. But it's not easy to follow. But what I would always tell the people that watch me is like, if you just give it a chance, if you just if you give it an opportunity, the universe, God, or whatever, to prove itself to you, then you see just how supported you are and just how almost effortless and joyful your forward expansion can be.
Right. It's really interesting because people often say, one of the things I hear a lot is an instilled belief in a lot of my clients that comes from their childhood, which is a fear of failing. We all have different fears. I'm scared I'll be abandoned. I'm scared I'll be alone. I'm scared I'll fail. Failing's really interesting though, because we think I need to stay on something that's a long linear timeline, right? I've been in this relationship for 30 years, and even though it doesn't call to my soul, I should keep staying in it, right? Yeah. And the belief is that if I let go of it, then I failed. But what you're not seeing is if we use how failing works in the school system, if you fail, you stay in it again. So what if you're staying in something and thinking that I have to keep staying in it, otherwise I failed, but you're now going, wait, I've stayed in this relationship for 30 years, which means I've stayed in first grade for 30 years. Right. It's not me saying get out of a long-term relationship. If it calls to your soul, stay in it. But it's got to call to your soul in this minute, right? What you're saying yes to, I don't believe the universe works in time, meaning bringing in things to consider, I've been here this long, or I've done something this long, or what it will even be like in the future. You just have now, and you have what you should do in this second based on what feels lighter, what feels more expansive. And usually that comes with no mental evidence of why you should. In fact, usually the mental evidence is to the thing that you're letting go of, or the old world, right? You could say, do I want to let go of this job? Well, I can mentally see they're going to give me a promotion later. Right. That's your mind making sense out of why you're ignoring your heart. Yes. Right? Your mind is literally going, if you're not listening to your body, I need to kick in and come up with a reason for it. Everything I've ever done that truly is a soulful calling, I've never explained to anybody. Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah. I've never been my daughter, who's got a birthday coming up. I've never been well, she's a good daughter and she gets good medical, so I'll keep being her father. Right? Wouldn't that be weird? Or, this job, I don't, have any explanation of it or apologize for it. But we all know what it's like to be that relationship sucks, but they took me to a nice dinner once. I hate this job, but I will get a promotion. When you start to bring in justification, that's actually the false egoic self stopping you from following your highest. And if you listen to that, you will be more in your head because it's giving you the tangible reasons to stay. But if you listen to the calling, you leave the tangible reasons and you move into a world, honestly, that is so synchronistic and open and possible, and it doesn't work on the same linear timeline. An analogy I've used before, I've actually heard other speakers in different ways kind of use this, but an elevator is just going up, and sometimes an elevator passes a floor, and if you're looking down that floor, you're like, oh, that's the answer to my life. But if you get off, then you're off the elevator, and it's trying really hard to pick us up. And sometimes it just needs us to do something that's a little different than we're used to. If you've been really clingy, let go for a while. Or if you've been very avoidant, move in. Or if, it just wants you to learn every aspect of life. It wants you to learn love. It wants you to learn to love the patterns in your body you usually don't love, right? Like, I have people say words out loud like, you know, they'll be like, well, I feel really angry. And I have them say to the energy in their body, you're allowed to be angry in my body. They'll be like, I feel I'll feel like a bad person. I'll tell them to say, you're allowed to be a bad person in my body. That's not aiming for them to be a bad person. What that is saying, I love you to every aspect of myself, even if, you know, even if you're bad, and then that actually stops it from being that, because it sees that it's loved. And we're here to learn love. I love you if you procrastinate. I love you if you're lonely. I love you. You're allowed to be these things in my body. Because what we do is when these things come up, the ego tries to fix it, and then it creates more of that.
Yes.
Right? So it's learning to love every aspect of yourself through acceptance, not like the verb love, like Disney movies, like just seeing, you know, being present for this energy that's here.
And
right?
just acknowledging it. I look at it like, I've been doing that, by the way, that technique, because I heard you do it on some of your clients, and it is very effective, because I think there is such almost like an unconscious resistance and judgment and shaming to all of those darker aspects of us. We make a mistake, or I hurt someone's feelings, and then there's like a resistance to it. But just that simple trick of saying, you know what, you're allowed to make a mistake. You're allowed to hurt someone's feelings. It like creates this space, like you're holding space for your little inner child who's just saying, I feel this way. I can't help it. These are my feelings. And it's like, nope, stuff it down.
Yes.
But it's like a retraining our mind to stop doing that, because it's like, it's not going anywhere. It's going to come up some other way regardless.
Yes.
But you can sort of end it right then and there by just creating that space of acceptance.
And when they hear that, again, that's not aiming for it. Like, to say you're allowed to hurt someone's feelings isn't saying, so go,
that you
call people up and talk.
You're not going to learn from that mistake.
What it is saying is, I'm saying to it, if you're hurt by someone else, you're allowed to feel hurt in my body.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, imagine it if you think of it in a tangible level, like, imagine one of your kids, or like if my daughter came up to me and she's like, no one loves me. What does she need from me? You know, I know what she doesn't need from me is for me to go 1 second and run out of the room and abandon her so I can get the neighbors to like her.
Yeah.
Right? She needs to know that it's okay to not feel loved right now.
Yeah.
Right? So imagine one of your boys coming up to you, right, and saying that, and you're just ignoring them and trying to fix. Now, we're doing the same thing here. When you go, hey, that partner broke up with me, so I feel unloved. Well, instead of chasing them down and trying to force someone on the external with their own ego to love you, right? Instead, you say to the energy that's your inner child, you're allowed to feel unloved in my body. You're allowed to feel abandoned in my body. It's almost not even about it's not about the other person.
Right.
It's down, because this whole thing is down to you and you. It's kind of like, I always think of this as blackjack. In blackjack, it's just you versus the dealer, even if there's 7 people on the table, right? So even though you think this is about you and your partner and winning, or you in a political argument with someone else, or trying to make a point or whatever, we're just here. This is just between you and God, right? This is about you connecting with your expansion. So even if someone seems like they screwed you over, what am I here to learn from my expansion? Not how do I get them back or prove to them or whatever. That's ego. We send love to them, and you definitely stand up for yourself if you need to, but at the same time, your soul is dying to expand, and these things that are coming into your life that feel really difficult are here to show you where you haven't loved yourself inside of your own body, where you haven't accepted yourself, right? You know what I realized empath's biggest one, and you and I, the people that follow our work would mainly be empaths, right?
Yeah.
Open-hearted people who feel hurt often draw narcissists in, right?
Yes.
So I say to them to say this in their body, because the more you're in resistance to narcissists, that's because you actually still have a little narcissistic energy in your own body.
Yes.
So the hardest thing for empaths to say, I find, is tell them to say to the energy in your body, you're allowed to sometimes be a narcissist in my body.
Yeah.
Right? Because the part of them that's mad about that and wants to do it their way is narcissism.
Yes.
Right? So at the same time, you becoming an open-hearted energy for everything in your body. A great one is if you want to learn to make money, I love you even if you're broke, right? Like usually trying to make money is out of a fear of being broke, right? And that's not sustainable anymore.
Right.
Right? So if you're connected to your soul and you're not in this I can't be broke energy, you're going to be open to much bigger ideas. But if you don't do that, you're aiming at broke, thinking you're aiming at money.
Yeah.
Right?
And even if you hit the money, you still feel broke anyways.
Completely.
You know, and that can sometimes happen too. We do have a strong will, some human beings, and they can sort of run a long way with that fear and create exactly what they think they need. But the irony is, once you get that, if it's been created from that faulty foundation of fear or not loving yourself, then you realize, oh wow, I feel the exact same. This did absolutely nothing to change that. And it's like, well, that's actually kind of an opportunity then to really like realize the happiness and wholeness is an inside job.
Well, let's think of it this way too. Let's say you grew up in a house where your parents said money doesn't grow on trees, it's the root of all evil. You have all these beliefs. Now that's also how you connect to your family, right?
Yeah.
So you feel love via how broke we are. You're going to actually find yourself attracted to people who also believe that way, right? Because it's not familiar or like home to be with someone who just believes that all you are is abundance. That's death to you if your whole family grew up in this kind of, we don't make money and life isn't really hard life. So in that state, if someone offers you $1 million, that's death to who you are.
Yeah.
So you're going to sabotage it.
Yes.
And because that's death to who you that's not death to who you actually are, but it's death to who you perceive you are. And what's trying to die is who we perceive we are based on our family unit, and have that go for the truth of what we are, which is just this infinite now that's so incredible. And to get there, one of the things the universe had to do was create the pandemic. Like it goes, I need to break all your patterns. Like you're too used to being on planes and going to restaurants, and you need time out and you need to be away, and you have an abundant enough job that you're not looking at your soul, and you have all these things. So I feel like 2020 was the greatest pattern break for all of us. It's like, I'm going to stop you from being where you were headed because you were trying to be number one in the third density world. But I want to kill all that and have you really question things. And that's why the last 2.5 years, we've been saying goodbye to things that we thought were going to be with us forever. We've been letting go of things. I release and cry out stuff like every 2 or 3 days, all the time. And it's okay. Like you're just this evolving being, and life is trying to get you to cry out. What you're crying out is the idea of who you were in that childhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic was a blessing. I also feel like a lot of the way the world was working was just so fast. And like you said, all of us have created these lives as quiet tap dancers, meaning very inauthentic self-expressions founded upon the traumas of our childhood. And no one really gives themselves the time to really be with themselves, to see the obvious and make new changes. And I think the pandemic really gave us all an opportunity to like kind of forced us just to be with ourselves.
Yes.
And how does this feel? Well, it's uncomfortable. Well, because there's a lot of house cleaning that we have not done.
Yes.
And for me, it was a period of a lot of just self-reflection and really being able to really like discover like, what are my true values? What do I really want to do in life when this does open back up?
Yes.
And I found it was a lot different than the direction I was previously going. And I'm fortunate for that time because now my pursuits, my energy is being put into something that's more true, more me, more authentic, and therefore more fulfilling.
I love that. One of the things that you'll notice is trying to happen now is it used to be you were this person that was, so what do I do? I hear that question so much, right? So with meditation, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, that's great. Everything you're saying. People watch this call and be like, okay, that's great. So what do I do? That's because you associate you are what you do. And you'll notice that in that character, you live in the future. You're never, ever okay with now. Like even now is like, okay, we call just sitting in the now doing nothing. to me, it's the most productive thing we have. Like when I'm doing nothing, I told you this the other night, but when I'm sitting in a chair in a hammock outside for 2 hours a night without my phone, it is the most productive thing. Because if I'm not egoically in the doing, then it's almost like the universe goes, okay, I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to make this cry out. I'm going to get you here. I'm going to give you this insane idea for a new book. I'm going to, heal something. I'm going to help you forgive someone. That's all being done.
It's productive.
Right.
Time well spent. Yeah.
And this is beyond what the self that we think does stuff does. Do you get what I'm saying? So when we're like, what do I do? Who's that I? Because there is no you. Right? The more you do this, even on the higher versions of this, people are like, I'm a creative being. Well, when you go even higher than this, you start to realize something's creating through me. I don't even have to do the creating.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like this idea that I'm now a creator. There's like an egoic construct that's trying to run the creating, when the truth is you have no ability to not have creating happen through you. And when we try to orchestrate it and block it, we notice that we have a ton of negative thoughts. That's the ego creating. And so you have you're still spitting out creation every second. It's just negative. Worrying is creating, right?
Yep.
Complaining is creating. You literally have to be one way or another. You're in the negative or in the positive. The more you're in the now, the more you allow and realize I'm not a creator. It creates through me. And there's less and less of a Kyle even existing here. There's less and less of the story of me that includes my past. That's dying. That doesn't exist. And so it's more and more of me just listening and going, what are you telling me? What do you want? What's true for you? Because I'm realizing the story of Kyle has nothing to say, right? It's weird how, we live in a world where of course we want freedom of speech, but I believe almost in this time we're just a bunch of egos screaming at each other right now. And we need freedom to hear also. I'm totally for freedom of speech, but freedom to hear first. I need to hear something higher than just I'm mad at that other political opponent, or I'm mad at that person that hurt me. Like there's better trying to be spoken to us right now.
Yeah.
You know, and we're in this small self talking about how we're mad at a restaurant or something. It's like
right.
crazy.
Yeah, and that's why I like what you said about I was impressed when you told me that you're able to just sit still for a couple hours every night, and it's something I'm working up to, but I also know why you do it, because I'll sit still for about 20 minutes a day. That's like where I'm at currently. But as I sit still, it's almost like the next steps that are actually in harmony with not only what's best for me, but also the whole, are very clear.
Yes.
So even though I'm taking time out and not doing anything, when it is time to do something, I get much more of a bang for my buck.
Right.
It's much more productive, much more inspired,
right.
And again, much more in alignment. And that kind of going through life with that energy, then it can build upon itself.
Yes.
And we don't know how it's going to do that exactly. But maybe that's the fun. That's kind of the mystery that we're all kind of getting used to, that we can not only work a lot less, but it's like we get to enjoy a life of more variety, more spice, more magic, more synchronicity, just like us running into each other. That's the kind of thing we're exchanging for this illusion of control.
Yes.
And the universe, I feel like, is trying to really make it almost more painful to hold on to that control. It's heavier.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Like you said, it's becoming, I don't know if you said it this way, but this was kind of where I was going to join you in that, is that it's becoming impossible to keep that egoic grab.
Yes.
Right? And that, it's too overwhelming. You can't, control what people think about you. You can't control if someone wants to leave. You can't control what your money situation is, what the government's doing, what's happening. It's literally going, okay, I'm going to become so chaotic that that your false you has no choice but to let go.
Yeah.
And you don't even get to choose to let go. It's just finally exhausting. You're just grabbing at the tree and you missed it now. And, and you go through whatever little negotiations you can. Then you go through an addictive stage. This is all denial of the new you that's birthing.
Yeah.
Then maybe you go through an anger. I notice that when I'm working with clients that's like, no, everything's fine. You go a little deeper and then, well, I'm pissed. I'm like, let's let that out.
Yeah.
And then it's just freedom. It's crying after anger usually, and then it's freedom, because what are you crying out? Like, crying is the release of something that you literally thought you were a second ago, but you could think you're one thing and then it leaves and then you're still here. So you couldn't be whatever you believe right now. Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying? If you believed one thing and then you released it and then you still existed, then you can't be your beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? So when we transcend things and we transform ourselves into this higher being, you'll notice that what it is a lot of death. It's egoic death. And it can only die through your love of it. It cannot die through your egoic push to get out. It cannot die through force. It just dies to you. And it's trying really hard to stay alive. And it needs your understanding. It needs your listening. It needs your permission. It needs your acceptance. And you'll realize one thing I realized is something that someone's triggered about now is not what they're triggered about.
Right.
It's about something from before that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So like you think you're mad because someone said something at work, but it's really that person feels like your mom or something like that.
Yeah, it reminds you of something else
right.
in the past.
That you never healed yet. That was a stored trauma. My desire for life that I can see right now while I'm wide open to even better than that is coming is eventually, this will sound nuts, this will sound crazy, but I don't care. I know this is coming. Eventually we're going to live in a triggerless world because all the things that are triggered will be dissipated. So imagine a trigger is like a suitcase that you keep holding, and then you have a character on top of it that you call me, right? So this is the one that defends and fights and achieves so that you're not shamed. Then that falls off, and then the suitcase is exposed. There's shame that's seen, there's whatever, and then that falls off. You're less triggered.
Yeah.
Right? I am so much less triggered than I was like 5 years ago. And it's not like some fake spiritual denial. It's just like, other people's pain in a lot of ways really doesn't involve me. If it triggers me, then that's for me to look at.
And then it's a blessing.
Right.
And I think what you said is a product of you owning the things that trigger you. And not, like you said, not getting caught up in the story or this person did this and that. It's like, oh, regardless, even if it's, maybe I'm justified of being resentful because someone really screws me over.
Right.
If I feel really worked up, I still know a lot of that's still my own energy, my own something within myself. And if I can use that as an opportunity to look at myself, why do I feel this way? Why can't I accept this?
Yes.
Then it's like, then you get to remove a suitcase, as you said. And like you said, the more you just own it, the less the universe needs to trigger you because you're becoming more of a conscious person.
Not only that, but I'll tell you something. I don't know if the audience will be excited for us to go this far and this deep, but I'll tell you something that I believe. I've noticed a very obvious parallel, at least in my life, that when the trigger that I'm feeling or that I watch a client release or that I release happens, the thing that was triggering it dissolves too.
Yeah.
So I watched I had a client once who was a woman who was talking to me about her mom had not spoken to her for like 10 years and she was so mad about it and everything. We worked through it. What's it bringing up for you? Or, she was realizing I feel abandoned. So it left the blame to mom. She started being there for the abandoned. So she said to it, you're allowed to be abandoned in my body. She cried it out. She cried out all these other things. She started releasing all kinds of stuff and getting very here. She got to a place where it's okay that her mom didn't call her. And her mom called her. During my session.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, perfect.
So it was like this woman hadn't called her in years. Now she's looking at, I have this wall up against saying that shouldn't be the case. That's ego. The ego's saying the thing that's happening shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Right? And it is happening. And so what we don't get is like your acceptance of it is going to both take your resistance out, but it very often changes the external to match that.
Yeah.
If you're fine with being broke all the way, not in a denial spiritual thing, you get to a place where I need to make money because I'm scared of being broke. And you're allowed to be broke in my body. You're allowed to be homeless in my body. You're allowed to be alone in my body. Then you're fine. You can just feel the frequency change right here. You're now open to bigger things. Next thing you know, you are a higher receiver of abundance because you're not full still of the energy that's scared to be broke.
Yeah.
So I think not only when you cry that out, does that thing heal in you, but I have seen a very obvious parallel to you finally forgive someone inside, you don't even call them, and they'll call you and apologize. You finally get over needing the specific thing to happen some egoic way, and all of a sudden it happens. You're really, truly surrendered that you get that the universe is doing this, not you. The universe knows everything that it's doing. Everything that you think shouldn't be happening, that's your war, right? So when you get to a place where you're just like, okay, this is supposed to be happening. Like Byron Katie says, it's supposed to happen because it is.
Yeah.
That's our freedom, and we grew up in a lower consciousness that didn't know any of that. So our parents and our grandparents put suitcases on us.
Yeah.
But we're in a time now where it's not as easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's chaotic because all the suitcases are coming out, but there used to be this time where, in the 50s, it's just like this perfect, honey, I'm home and it's perfect. But there was terror going on inside those houses with this perfect image. The only difference between now and then is we now see it.
Yes.
Right? So now we see it. And the seeing it helps us get to a place of understanding, accepting, healing, releasing.
Yeah.
New world birth through you.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
And it's a blessing. It reminds me of the event we just did. What came up for me, as I told the audience, and it was my first bigger event. With
congratulations.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thank you. And what came up was the realization that I need everyone to be happy with it. And with 90 people, it's impossible.
Right.
No matter what I would do, there's going to be a couple of people that complain, about the food or this or that, or I wanted more of this. And it was like the first half of the retreat was so chaotic because there was that part of me still trying to, please everybody.
Yes.
But it was just overwhelming. It was chaotic. And one could look at that as, oh, wow, Victor's having a rough time with his event. But it was a blessing because it was just too much. I eventually just had to say, you know what? And just sort of accept that I can't please everybody and just let that be a reality. And then once I let it go, once I accepted that, everybody had a fantastic time.
Well,
it worked that way, just as you said.
And if that wall is in you, what would the universe have to do?
Right.
It would have to send in people who are complaining.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's what it did, yeah.
And I just say that for everyone. If you're I keep wanting this thing to not happen, the universe is okay, the way we handle it is I send in the thing they don't want to have happen to knock against their decision of how everything should be. Because they won't grow. Just so we know, we wouldn't grow if everyone 100% liked it.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In fact, I can't think of a real world changer that wasn't violently hated by half the planet.
Right.
Yeah. Right? When you think of Lincoln or MLK or, whatever.
Right. Stop what they were doing because, you know what? I'm upsetting a couple of people. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
And so, but if that's an inner trigger, this can't happen, right? Then life goes, okay, that resistance needs to be met. We're going to hammer at it. We've hit a metal wall.
Yeah.
So send in as many people as we can or whatever. And, I know that feeling, and I've had that many times in my life too. And you start to feel this, the universe by the way, the more you get hyper attuned to that too, as you know, the universe gets better at going, okay, he thinks he's out of it, but this will trigger him.
Yeah.
This would be the worst for him, so he can grow, so he can let go of that. Because who would he be if that was healed and okay? Who would he be if that was allowed?
Yeah.
How much more could I work through him? Right? Or her, if you're watching, and a female, if that was all allowed, right? How much more would you be if it was, and how much crazier and better would the events become if you were, because it would be such an authentic expression of you versus what you think they want.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's as we keep getting better, we're here to express ourselves and let the audience be a byproduct of it. You know, like there's no apple tree going, what if people don't like apples? Or, you know, like they're just making this. They're not even thinking how many numbers do I sell, or, you know, really I'm a pear tree, I think. I want to be more like that. They're just make apples. That's their only job.
Yeah.
And our job is offering that content. I think my job more is hearing new stuff and offering less, actually. It's almost like, it's still offer it, but like not get enslaved to, I got to get this out. Like, go up the ladder and listen, because it's like telling me more and more, just your frequency creates change more than you selling, even if it's 100 million books.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So because it's telling me I could be alone in a house doing nothing if my frequency is even higher and affect more of the planet than if I stay here in a doer vibration and sell 10 million, 100 million books, you know, get 10 billion views.
Right.
It goes, just, you know, your frequency is more important than your numbers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's the big lesson too. So if you were triggered by what they were saying, it's like going, oh, you're still on the, which I have too, by the way.
Yeah.
We're still on the numbers side. It's like, I need you to keep going up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I also found that these triggers, they can, not only when you accept them and learn from them, do they help like maybe like the current situation resolve itself, which in my case it did, but it also can sometimes provoke a really deep insight that can bleed into many areas of your life. Like I realized, where does that come from, Victor?
Yes.
Why? I know it's ridiculous to want to please everybody, so why am I doing it? It's still happening. And I realized it's because my dad is trying to please dad, basically.
Yes.
And once I realized, like,
how honest.
I don't have to please dad. I can be myself. I can be the judge of quality work I'm doing. Well, and that's kind of what came to me. It's like, I can decide. I'm aware enough to know if I'm doing a good job or not. And that's enough. If I'm proud of it, then I don't need to keep looking to dad, i.e. the external, all the people, for validation, because so it frees me from that, you know, retreat situation, but also like, how many other areas of my life am I doing that exact same thing unnecessarily to my own detriment?
Yes.
And now it's like, because of that one overwhelming negative experience on the surface, I feel liberated in like many areas.
And check this out. It's not even pleasing dad. It's pleasing dad when you were a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, I know that even now, if you see you attempting it for your dad now, it's the kid still unhealed and unforgiven, right? Yeah. And let's look at how much consciousness has risen compared to technology, right? So I always think of consciousness, like I think of the 50s consciousness when we were just, I think, kind of just like do what anyone says. There was no questioning anything. It was just like, you know, from what I see, 80s felt like an entrepreneurial boom and kind of an achievement boom. And then like I see like 2000s as like this kind of change, and we open The Secret. So it's like achieving through manifestation and magic and things like that. And now it feels like, okay, not only think positive, because there's darkness here too. Yeah. I want you to be open to the whole thing. So imagine consciousness moved up like that. Now think of technology in those same times. In the 80s, early 80s, late 70s, we had rotary phones, right? So if you're in this time, we have like iPhone 13s or something, trying to get approval from a rotary phone. And a rotary phone doesn't have apps. It doesn't upgrade. It's a big clunky thing that plugs into the wall.
Takes
it
like
only
2 minutes to dial a number.
Right. Yeah. So we're in this time where if you realize you're trying to get your parents' approval, but what if you're on a higher consciousness than them? You're trying to get people who can't understand you to understand you. So the healing for that is let that go. They don't need to understand me. And then you'll find that you love them, because really, I understand that they raised you first, but sometimes they were held back consciousness-wise, and you're moving into a butterfly. If you're watching this kind of content, you're doing this kind of work, now you're at a place where you're this butterfly, but you're trying to like get the cocoons in your life to like get you, but they can't fly. And instead you need to fly for yourself and bring love to them and have a very different dynamic with the parents now.
Yeah.
Right. So I get it too. I have the same dad probably, like, you know, like we're trying to get dad to understand who we are, but think of our dads growing up in Vietnam wartime and these different things. the highest they knew was maybe achievement or these different things, and we're doing this airy-fairy crap.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That is real for us.
Right.
But to them might be like, that's out of what I get.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's a freedom in being like, my dad, like for you, my dad will never get me, and my dad does not ever have to get me.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad, like anyone watching, if you want to free yourself, my mom never has to understand me. Like really feel that. That way you're left with you understanding you, right? My dad doesn't ever have to understand me. That means you understand you. So this kid that's fighting for the hope that one day they'll get you, you know, or your siblings or whatever else, that can go. Mm-hmm. And now you're here with this energy because you get you. You don't need anyone outside of you to get you. That's you dodging yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, and that includes a giant following. In fact, the higher you go up, I would imagine the lower the numbers would be, since all of society isn't in a oneness place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no offense to any of these things, but NSYNC brings probably bigger numbers than Miles Davis.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but I wouldn't say that means they're a better musician. Right?
Yeah.
So we're just all here doing our thing and surrendering those numbers, and just sometimes as a byproduct they show up nicely, and that's beautiful, but that's not the goal.
Yeah, when you're living that authentic life, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, and I've gotten like enough numbers on YouTube to realize that it makes no difference in how I feel about myself, my happiness, nothing. So it's more about just being me as best I can, because that just feels the best.
Did you ever hear Jim Carrey say he was doing the Golden Globes and he came out to present or something, and he said, "Yes, I'm 2-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey." And he goes, "But when I go to bed at night, I have dreams of being 3-time Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey." And he goes, "'Cause then I'd be enough."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And then I could stop all this madness.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so accurate. Like, why do we think, like if you showed you 10 years ago, you now, wouldn't his mind be blown?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you showed him you now and we're still seeking something more,
right.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
Like if you showed me 20 years ago, okay, you're going to be totally fulfilled. You're going to be a dad. You're going to write books. You're going to do all this stuff. And just so you know, you're still going to be seeking a bunch and worried that you're not loved at times. And, and be like, really? Because that's way bigger than I thought I was going to become.
Yeah.
That's way bigger than I thought I was going to experience, you know?
Yeah. Even with like I think nowadays a lot of people are hip to the idea that, okay, if I become rich, that's not going to make me happy. Most people know that. But even like my more sophisticated spiritual goals I've accomplished, like I'm a father, I have freedom, I have a purpose, all these things.
Yeah.
And that's still not influencing how I feel about myself. None of it.
Right.
It really is just about, wow, happiness is just about like self-acceptance and finding that love underneath all that pain. And then the external does tend to improve and become more favorable and more around our preferences, but that's so secondary. It's more about like I look back and I realize I could have been a lot happier years ago.
Yes.
Because I look now back at, you know, challenging circumstances with nostalgia, because I realized, wow, there was a lot there I didn't see because I was seeking, and I could have maybe started to work on my inner world then and appreciated that.
Well, and I'll say this, what a gift it is. First of all, if anyone's watching this far, which I'm sure they are, I just want to point out to you, if you're someone who's watching this far, how grateful we should all be that we're in a frequency that does, because as you're talking about this, we've now normalized how much work we do on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying, be excited if you're seeking on this depth, because you're going to have you do have a magical life. Because one of the things I think that's happened in this time is almost like a split, where you're either in more and more calcified, no looking in, and everything is blame, right? It's that politician, it's that thing. And I can't even have a dialogue about one feeling in my body.
Yeah.
Or you're doing the opposite, which is what we're doing, which is I'm going inward, and everything that's hitting me, I'm learning from it, and I'm getting lighter and lighter and freer. So there's people we know that are getting more angry and shut off and addicted.
Yes.
And that's what Dolores Cannon talks about, the two earths, right?
Yeah.
I kind of see this as that. Like you're either, and you can see the obvious two types now.
Yes.
You're either now open and crying out stuff and being honest with yourself and healing and looking inward and undoing blame, even to yourself, you're undoing blame, or you're in this, you're wrong, we need to all grab each other and then hate in this other way. That's going down. I went through some painful stuff a couple years ago, and I went to a darkness retreat.
Yeah,
I was pitch black for 10 days, no phone. Only saw pitch black, had no idea what time of day it was ever, and I cried every 45 minutes probably. just existing.
Yeah.
Like, it's all I'm doing is just being. But it's like being in a forced meditation for 10 days. And I felt magic on the other side of it. I had crazy lucid dreams. I felt my mom float into the room and hold me. I felt, my grandma sing and play piano with me again, who passed away. Like, all these things happened and were so synchronistic. But it's because I was like, I want to know what I am. And I realized that's my intention on this planet with everything I do. It's not to, people say my biggest goal is to affect as many people as possible. That's nice. But, if you're a personal trainer, you have to also be fit, right?
Yes.
So what would you think would be more effective? To be healthy yourself and then do whatever from there, or stay completely unhealthy and then try to get everyone healthy?
Yeah.
Right? So our number one goal in the hierarchy is to find who we are. So my number one intention is to know what I truly am. And everything that seems positive and negative is moving me towards that. And the byproduct can be the content's better and it does seem to help people, but that intention is like seeming invincible for me.
Yeah, and I think the former intention you mentioned is also, for me anyway, I discovered it's still from like an insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
I want to reach as many people as possible, so I finally feel like I'm enough.
Right.
Came down to. I was watching a podcast with Eminem and Mike Tyson. Whether you like him or hate him, they became world famous superstars, and they were both talking about that.
Right.
That like need to be number one. It's coming from like anxiety, insecurity, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And then ironically, as you said, if you just focus on just being the best version of yourself, knowing your true self, then you will likely affect more people regardless, but that's not the goal.
Well, and imagine this, because Mike Tyson and Eminem are incredible, that consciousness was perfect for them. You know what I mean? Like, that would be a great Mike Tyson, 1989, the highest there is how do I be number one? I mean, if I bet if I was born and doing this work now, but it was 1989, if I was 44 at 1989 doing this kind of work, it would be to be number one, because the consciousness wasn't like, I'm ready to show every person in the world what's going on inside of them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a great intention for that time.
Yeah.
And that's probably the highest we had. Mm-hmm. But as we keep doing this work, I'm like, being number one for me now in 2022 feels like a contraction.
Yeah.
Right? An analogy I've thought of before is like, if you go into a room and I have just a flashlight and we're like, think positive, so we're shining the flashlight only on the positive stuff, that's really cool. But what happens if God turns on the whole room and you see a dead body here with a bunch of rats?
Right.
And you're going, okay, I'm just going to look here. It's like, we see everything, but right now let's focus on the body.
Yeah.
Right. So now what the universe is doing is showing you all the rats, and it's like,
turn the lights on.
Yeah. So then you don't even have to be the doer anymore. It's going, we're going to heal this. I think 10 years from now is going to be amazing, because all the bodies are cleaning out, you know?
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Right on.
Yeah.
I feel like me and Kyle could just talk for hours, but he's got his daughter's birthday is later today, so I thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you,
and sharing
brother.
your energy with this on a big day for you. So Kyle, where can people find you?
Well, I have a YouTube channel too that is Kyle Cease, and then we have my website, kylecease.com. The thing that I'm most excited about right now that is really what's opened for me to counter the dark things that are going on in the world has been really getting excited about doing events and donating the entire thing to charity. I just had this thing where I was talking to someone from Operation Underground Railroad. They're a group of people, that's what this shirt is, Operation Underground Railroad. They're a group of people who are rescuing kids from child trafficking. And this is a thing that's happening, and this is part of the look at the darkness in the world thing, you know? And I was talking to them, and I was just felt this calling to do a live event, and I was like, maybe I'll give them 10% of the money or whatever. And then I was like, I'm going to give you all the money from the event.
Wow.
And I announced it 2 weeks ago, and so far we've brought in $150,000. And we're selling out this event. The event will be in Sedona at this 750-seat theater. I'll send you the event link that you can put in the thing. And please see me on my website. And we have all kinds of stuff. You know, we have live events on a membership thing. We do all kinds of stuff. And we have a YouTube channel that has a ton there too. So, and I have 2 books out also.
Yes.
The Illusion of Money is my favorite of the 2 books. So check out The Illusion of Money. The event that I'm doing is in March, but it's already almost sold out. So check it out. Join us for a 2-day event that'll change your life. It's called Freeing All Children Inside and Out, because the goal is we're going to take the money and help free children that are in terrible situations, while at the same time freeing our inner children by bringing love to it and bringing it to the world. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Kyle. And just for everyone's reference, I will leave all those links down below, your website, the YouTube channel, and a link to that event.
Awesome.
I can't recommend your channel enough. I watch it. I don't watch a lot of influencers, but it's so crazy that right before I bumped into you, I stumbled upon your channel. And
that is weird.
You have a lot of stuff to share that, like, I could tell you've learned that I'm just now coming into. So I feel like you've come into my life for a reason, and I've gotten so much out of your content as well. So he has a really good YouTube channel, folks. I'll leave the links down below. And again, thank you for coming on, my friend.
I appreciate you, brother. I love you, man.
Love you too.
I got a ton of great stuff to learn from you too. So we're all here teaching each other. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. You're very welcome.
Yeah.